I first started working with athletes in 1967 with the Canadian National Volleyball Team, I was the only sports psychologist to my knowledge in Canada, and there may have been 3 or 4 in the United States. Today, every single team in Canada has a sports psychologist, and their primary function is teaching them how to mentally rehearse, make mental movies, mentally preparing themselves, building up self-esteem, and so on. Critical. And goals, again. There's another example I wanted to give with respect to goal setting. A very good friend of mine, when he took over as chairman of the board, CEO of a large corporation, sat down with vice presidents and wondered what their goals or vision was for the company, and it was somewhat disjointed. So he thought, what can I do? He went out and purchased a 1,000-piece jigsaw puzzle. And he removed the top, put pieces all on the floor, and he said to them, look, this is an exercise in communication and team building. I'd like to see you work together as a team, put the pieces together. And they said, oh, great. And after about 15 minutes, there was a little bit of jostling and that sort of thing, and he could see that things are getting a little testy.
So they didn't have the picture?
No picture. Then he said, look, I've got the picture in the next room, but I'm going to take you in here one at a time and show you the picture, since this is an experiment in team building, communication. So the trick of the experiment was he showed them 9 different box tops. So they had 9 different pictures. When they came out, of course, it was absolute chaos. Everybody said, stop, I cannot stand this. And he showed them the picture. And of course, they put it together in a matter of 10, 15 minutes. Question, how many of us are in a relationship, in a company, in a corporation, in a team, that have no idea what the big picture is?
Or have different goals.
Or different goals, different expectations.
So the key to a really successful high-performance team is where everybody is working towards the same goal, and they all understand that goal.
That's right. That's right. And of course, looking for ways to build up self-esteem within both the corporation, the team, and individually. High-performance people are always going out of their way to build up self-esteem.
Well, how do you overcome years and years of programming since childhood, if you grew up in Iowa or someplace like that, where you've been inundated with negative remarks?
You change it the same way you learned it. You begin substituting the negative self-talk, the negative images, the negative expectations with positive ones. It's exactly the same way you learned it in the first place.
And how do you do that?
Well, you begin being aware of the kinds of things you say to yourself.
You have to monitor your
In other words,
your
you know,
thoughts.
you're affirming things to yourself negatively or positively all the time. So an affirmation, let's say if I were to try to lose weight, I can't lose weight, it runs in the family, diets never work for me, I would change that. Every day and every way I'm finding it easier and easier to achieve my goal of weighing 165 pounds or whatever it may be. I'm finding it easy to lose weight. I feel good about myself as I'm looking healthier and feeling better and so on.
What you seem to be saying, and I hope I'm not pushing your point too far, is that really we're all hypnotizing ourselves all the time, and hypnosis is a powerful force that we all need to learn how to use in a positive manner.
Precisely.
There's no avoiding hypnosis.
Well, first of all, there's dehypnotizing yourself from your old suggestions.
Yeah.
Because if you have 45 to 50,000 thoughts a day, that's an awful lot of subliminal kinds of input that you're putting into yourself and that you're not aware of. And we know from the research, of course, that subliminal programming is very powerful and very effective. So we're doing it to ourselves. You're not aware of 45, 50,000 thoughts a day, are you?
I haven't counted.
No. I mean, it just goes, it happens, and so on. So as you begin becoming aware of them and stopping them, that's critically important. The other thing, of course, related to companies is that there are high self-esteem companies that really foster and build the sense of self in people, and low self-esteem companies. A low self-esteem company, and my image for that is the pyramid, where there's power at the top, control, and the employee is there to be of service to the employer. The high self-esteem company, the image I think of as a circle, and they're, instead of power, they're looking for ways of empowering their employees, sending them to seminars, increasing their training, and so on. And instead of control, influence. Have you ever tried to control and influence a child at the same time? You can't. Influence is a much more powerful motivating factor than control. And thirdly, instead of having the employee being of service to the employer, high self-esteem companies have it just the other way around. How can we, the company, be of service to you, the employer, to make you a better person?
It seems in today's work environment, more and more of the labor force are demanding high self-esteem companies.
Absolutely.
Because people are coming more and more to realize that they want self-actualization out of their work. It's not enough to just take a paycheck home.
That's right. And there are other factors too. High self-esteem people are aware, in effect, that we learn and process information in different ways, and the old left brain, right brain hypothesis. And even though it's a metaphor, it's a useful metaphor, because there was a recent article in the Harvard Business Review on left brain planners, right brain managers.
Left brain being kind of very linear.
Linear, logical, analytical.
And the right brain being artistic.
Intuitive. Simultaneous processing of all kinds of information.
Right.
And they found that the left brain planner prefers long written memos versus the right brain manager, who prefers this kind of contact, looking at body language, facial expression, voice tonality, and so on. The right brain manager is a networker. They're connected to all kinds of things going on in the community. The doors are always open. You can come in and go. The phones are ringing. Simultaneity of activity versus the pipe smoking, sitting up in the lofty office type left brain planner, and so on and so on. So I think high performance people realize that it's important to oscillate back and forth between two modes of consciousness depending on the task, and not looking at the world through gun barrel vision type thing.
So they try and really live balanced lives.
Yeah. And again, finding ways of being more creative, which again is a right brain.
But what about the sense that we often have of a high-performance individual almost being compulsively neurotic, like, putting in 15, 16 hours a day training or at the office? Is that not true?
Well, I think that's more like a workaholic who's always looking for a 10, who's demanding perfection, when a 9 is good enough. Excellence is okay. and that's the difference, that they're hooked into the work rather than
You don't need to be compulsive to be a high performer.
No, not at all. As a matter of fact, a lot of compulsive workaholics always have the better than attitude. In other words, how can I be better than someone else? Whereas the high performance person is looking at the issue, how can I be more than what I am now? And it's a subtle distinction, but an important one.
So they're really competing against themselves rather than competing against other people.
Precisely.
They're not driven in the same sense.
No, no.
But they must have a lot of drive.
They do. And there are a number of factors involved, but one is a desire, Jeffrey. You've got to have that fire in the belly, the desire to want to do what you are going to do. Secondly, the expectation, absolutely, the expectation that what you're going to do is going to work. No question about it. And thirdly, the imagination, using some of the things that we've talked about, the mental rehearsal, self-talk, and so on.
If you don't have that drive, what if you're basically, like many people are, and I've been in periods in my life, just kind of lazy, and yet, you want to make something more of your life? What would you do? Set a goal to have more drive?
Yes, absolutely. There have been times when I have found that my desire, my sort of fire in the belly has kind of waned. So I've made it part, my self-talk, my visualization has been to ignite that fire, to ignite that desire. And even though it doesn't happen right away, all of a sudden, gradually, I notice things start happening and boom.